changes. I closed my yoga studio. I moved to the Silicon Valley, area, if you know what I mean. I moved in with my boyfriend and my bonus son and pretty much became a stepmom for the first time ever in my life. I started teaching corporate yoga classes, started doing more consulting and training work for nonprofits and different universities, which was pretty darn cool. I found out I was pregnant, which was a bit of a surprise for me, but a very happy surprise. But of course, being pregnant is a journey for any mamas that know that experience. I stopped working full-time hours for like the first time in my life since starting to work full-time and doing a lot more jobs here and there versus like my full-time 9-to-5 situation, or, you know, when having the studio, it was more like a 4 a.m. to a 10 p.m. situation. So that was a big change. And then, of course, I had my baby. So yay, he is healthy and strong. But having a baby is also a huge change in life and a lot of adaptation and transition. And more recently, I got my real estate license and joined a brokerage. Wow. That was a lot. I don't think I even took a breath in between my sentences. But I think you're getting the point here. 2023 has been full of changes for me. Change and transition, beautiful blessings. And with beautiful blessings comes challenge. And with challenge comes growth. So I'm really excited to announce that we are about to start a new season of the Here to Uplift podcast. And just as I have seen my life change, I have seen the lives of so many entrepreneurs, community leaders, business owners change this year as well. And I'm so excited to continue showcasing those stories, because the one thing that didn't change was that the Here to Uplift podcast has been releasing episodes regularly, consistently, and we've had amazing guests every single time. So with all those changes, there's been this beautiful spot of consistency, and I'm so excited to continue it into 2024. Let's go.
What's up, y'all? You're tuning in to the Here to Uplift podcast. If you've been here before, welcome back. And thank you for being a part of our Uplift community. If you're new here, woohoo! Thanks for joining us, and we hope you continue listening and engaging with our community, where we center the stories of inspiring and impactful entrepreneurs and community leaders. I'm Lolo Fisher, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it.
Welcome back, y'all, to the Here to Uplift podcast. I named this podcast very intentionally. It started off back in 2022, actually, when I was opening my yoga studio and learning so much about being a first-time business owner, first time into the entrepreneurial space. And I just wanted to pick everybody's brain, everybody who had already been successful in doing this good work. And I learned so much just by having coffee chats and conversations on the side that I felt like everyone should have access to these beautiful moments of inspiration, to this wisdom, to this mentorship. And that's how Here to Uplift came to be. Uplift is something so central to my heart. My yoga studio was named Uplift Community Wellness Studio. Shout out to everybody back in the Merced Central Valley area who was a part of our community there. That community still exists today, even though there's not a physical space. I love seeing everybody continuing to connect. And we are really looking to expand what that Uplift community physical space created in terms of those deep connections and strong relationships, and expand it not only into the podcast, but into our communities wherever we are, so that we can connect with our sisters around the area, other listeners. So what that means, the intention remains the same. We are getting ready to launch our 2024 season. We are still centering the stories of women entrepreneurs, business leaders, community leaders, and change makers. It makes me so happy every time to hear these powerful stories, for myself to take these pieces off and get inspired, but to know that it's touching so many other lives means the world to me. So here we go with a brand new season, brand new year, after about a year and a half now of delicious episodes. I say delicious because every time I interview a guest, I'm like, I'm just letting you know I'm going to be trying to pull out all the juice. And when I say that, and for any future guests that are listening to this right now, when I say I want to pull out all the juice, it means I don't like surface level stuff. I want to get to the deep things. I want to know the highs and the lows of your journey, how you overcame obstacles, the biggest lessons you learned, and maybe some of those things that you never thought that you would share in a public setting, but that made an impact on you so that you can continue inspiring, making an impact, and paving a way for others to reach their success, their dreams, their goals too. So, while we are centering those stories, I'm excited to get a little more strategic with our podcast. And what I mean by that is, as someone who loves planning and strategy, it was really hard for me actually in this past year to let the conversations just flow and be more organic. Once I got the hang of it, these conversations have flowed so easy, and there's always just gems to pull out that you don't even expect to come up. But what that also means is sometimes we go on to tangents and get into random topics or lose track of like what the point of our conversation is. We're human, that's what happens. I'm probably doing it right now, even in this episode, but pulling it back. What that means for this new season in terms of being strategic is not only are you going to hear the stories of our guests and how they overcame obstacles, what their journey was into reaching their now success, but we're also going to have a centralized topic for each episode, something that you all as listeners and viewers have been asking about or possibly related to this season that it's being released. So, for example, throughout January, we're always talking and having conversations with our family and friends about New Year's resolutions, setting goals, maybe getting on track fitness and wellness-wise, what we want our new year to look like, or maybe just how to stay warm in this chilly season, depending on where you live and what you're listening to at the time. But in our episodes, that means we can be more strategic about the questions we ask. For example, in January, I'm super excited that we're going to be interviewing the co-founders of a gym fitness space actually right here in the San Jose Bay Area, Silicon Valley area. And they're going to be talking about how we can keep track of our fitness goals when we really get discouraged or when we've fallen off of track, off of consistency. Like, what do we do to get back onto it? We're going to be talking about how to move into 2024 unapologetically and speak ourselves into our goals with confidence. There's just amazing guests coming up, how to fight after failure and what that looks like. Y'all, this episode is being released at the very end of the year for a reason, because I am so pumped for this new year, new season, and particularly for our January episodes and special guests. So I hope you're ready for that too. So I'm saying this because I want you to know what to expect, but I also want you to connect with us and let us know what you want to hear. So in this episode, I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about how you can get engaged with us and how we can build more community, how you can give your input as to what you want to hear in the Here to Uplift podcast. But my point right here is the intention of Here to Uplift is the same. We want to uplift you through the stories, the examples, the pathways of our guests and how they share their stories. So when we amplify the voices, particularly of women of color who have worked so hard to get where they are today, we show and make a very clear example that you can do it too, that anybody could do it. And that's a huge goal for the Here to Uplift podcast is, just showing that it's possible and giving you some tools, tips, and advice to help you get there in whatever your dream goal or a special journey is. I know my journey's changing. Like I said in the intro, I just got my real estate license, and I don't think most folks who know me knew that was coming or were expecting it. I definitely kept it quiet until I actually got my license because I wanted to make sure I passed my exam, all that. But this is something I've been preparing for a while, and I'm so excited to announce it now. So let's get into some more deets. Before we get into some of those details of how you can get more connected with the Here to Uplift podcast, how you can get more engaged with this community, I got to take a moment to talk about why I even mention all these changes that have happened in 2023 for me, because I think it impacts you as well. And I want to share a quote. A lot of you have probably heard this already, but from our dear Denzel Washington, for anybody that is not familiar. He said, "Dreams without goals are just dreams, and ultimately they fuel disappointment. On the road to achieving your dreams, you must apply discipline, but more importantly, consistency. Because without commitment, you'll never start. But without consistency, you'll never finish. I love this quote. I love it. This last piece. Without commitment, you'll never start. But without consistency, you'll never finish. As you start thinking about 2024, and I'm sure by the time you're listening to this episode, you've already thought about 2024, maybe at least drafted some goals or resolutions, if not already, created a whole action plan if you're like me, who goes a little overboard. Tangent though. The commitment to writing out your goals is step one. Actually writing it or telling someone or putting it into practice, it is powerful and important. However, and there is a little however, but, and, maybe I'll do the and here. And once you make that first initial commitment of writing out or telling somebody your goals for this season or this year, or whenever you might be listening to this, you have to apply discipline and consistency. I'm so glad that this quote exists because it puts together a lot of the thought leadership that's out there about habit stacking, SMART goals, and how to create goals that will actually work for you. You know, what does it look like to write out attainable goals and then action plans? There's even conversations about why do we write resolutions or goals? We should just write intentions and then naturally things will manifest and come to be. Whatever path you choose, the point is that we're all focused on that growth mindset and improving ourselves, improving our lives, maybe personal life, maybe professional life, maybe our lives for our family's sake. And what that looks like today for me is that I am a little less glued onto the outcome, but a lot more glued on and really permanently glued on to the idea of hustle and flow season to season. So what I mean by this, in every season, we can adapt what our goals are and what we're doing to work towards them. So for this last season for me, for example, this last quarter of 2023, it was family season. It was baby, it was taking care of myself, getting ready to have the baby, having the baby, and then adapting to a brand new life with a newborn while still learning how to be a stepmom for the first time and still adjusting to my first year living in the Bay Area amidst the hustle and bustle of the city, right? And that has been so exciting for me, but it was challenging. Really, really challenging to adapt to a completely new lifestyle. However, adapting to that completely new lifestyle was exactly what I dreamed, aligned, and planned for myself. Every day may look a little different though, because that's my point. Season to season, our goals will change, our actual lived experience will change, and then that affects our alignment with our goals, what our day-to-day looks like versus what our goals are, because I definitely didn't start 2022 thinking I'm gonna have a baby. That wasn't necessarily my plan at the start of January. Some people might plan that. This one was not necessarily planned for me, right? But I adapted without losing sight of those bigger goals, maybe just changing some of the action steps to get there depending on my season. So, bigger goal, I want to create generational wealth for my family. Something extremely important to me that has been my goal for a long time. And the more I learn and get really strong financial education, the greater I build my financial literacy, the closer I am to truly taking action steps to build that generational wealth, not just planning it, but actually taking action. Side note here, I actually had this moment, it was a couple weeks ago, but my boyfriend pointed out to me, you're reading a lot less since moving here, since moving to the Bay Area. And I thought it was interesting because a lot of my friends and family who have known me for a long time know that I am such a bookworm. I love reading. I have way more books than I can ever read at one point in time. And I looked at my library, kind of all the books in our house, and I'm like, man, I am barely reading compared to what I used to. Like, I'm getting like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. I'm listening to podcasts and audiobooks a lot more, but actually sitting down with a book, which is one of my favorite pastimes, truly, I haven't been doing that much. And it was just weird. I was like, why? And my boyfriend pointed out to me, he was like, well, you've been reading less, but you've been doing more. And I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, well, you used to always tell me about all these things you were reading in books, that you were learning from books. that maybe inspired you from a good book. But this is the first year that I've seen you really take action on everything you've read. And maybe you go back and reference a book, or you still read in like little pieces here and there, but you're doing far more than just reading and thinking about it. And this is another point as to, it depends on the season you're in. There may be some seasons where you have to wait. I would say spring and summer for me, I felt called by God to listen. And I really felt like I was in a listening season. This might be a whole nother video, so I will not go deep into it. But essentially, I felt called to stop, pause, listen, to support my family however I can, but not necessarily to create any new goals, new industries, new things, not to add anything to my plate, but just to handle what was already on my plate and wait and listen for that next step, that next calling. That's part of what led me into saying, yes, I'm going to go for it and get my real estate license, something I was interested in a long time ago that I put on the back burner and said, not now. And now I'm saying yes now, because after listening, waiting, and growing my financial literacy, learning more of my financial education, I felt that this was the best choice for me in the stage of my life that I'm in as a new mom with a new baby, as someone who loves building relationships and is genuinely wanting to create a home, not just a house, but a truly home feeling and a home lifestyle. It sounds weird, but I want to live well. Not just live, I want to live well. And wellness is so much more than just taking a yoga or dance class, then going to the gym and doing some meditation. It's about the environment that you create for yourself. And I feel like home is the word that brings that together for me. I was interested in real estate a long time ago, and I've been interested in real estate investing for a long time. But I didn't feel ready to take that step into working in real estate until I learned more and had this waiting season. So now, as a real estate agent, not only am I going to be learning a ton about the process of buying, selling, investing for myself and my family, and what that looks like in terms of building security, financial security, and home security and financial wealth for us, but I'm going to get to help educate people into doing the same, to help people find maybe their first home or their forever home, because usually the first and forever are not always the same. I'm going to help people, establish their first investment properties. This is so incredibly exciting to me, but I don't think I would have been able to take this big step without that waiting season. So with all the change that has happened in 2023, it has led me into making big, powerful, impactful decisions for my life that I know are reaching for that bigger goal. So when you're setting your goals for 2024, maybe looking back at the resolutions and goals you set and making some edits, think about what that greater goal is and some of the possible pathways to get there. Generational wealth doesn't have just one pathway to get there. A lot of folks go into investing. Some folks go into real estate. Some folks go into opening their own business. Some folks go into saving, and figuring out which funds to put their savings into for the long term. All of it comes together for that greater goal, but they're each different steps, different actions to getting on the various pathways to that greater goal. So establish your greater goal, and then recognize that you got to hustle in some seasons, you got to flow and wait with some seasons, and waiting is not easy. It sounds easy, but waiting and listening is so hard to do, especially when you are someone who likes to take action or a perfectionist, achiever type like I am. It is hard to not add more to your plate, but we can do it. We can do it, and it is purposeful. Waiting seasons are so purposeful. So know when it's your season to hustle and work your butt off and add those things to your plate and say yes, and know when it's your season to say no, wait it out, and listen to your intuition and to God for what those next steps are for you and your family, for your goals. So that takes me to my next point of, what is that bigger goal for Uplift? I envision Here to Uplift not just being a podcast, but truly being a community. And I want you to be part of that community. If you're watching this, if you're listening, I consider you part of the Here to Uplift community. And that next step into truly building a greater community is making sure that it's not just you and me connecting, but that we're connecting with each other, that you feel like you can connect, relate to the guests that are featured on our podcast, and then connect to other listeners and viewers who are also inspired by the episodes or who might be local to you, or if you're traveling, that you might be able to connect with when you go on a trip. That is so powerful and something we so often miss. I've seen some of my favorite podcast hosts create communities through their podcasts and through their businesses and through different ventures that they create, but maybe started all from their podcast. And I love to see the way we can build relationships in this digital world. We're constantly changing our technology and our ways of connection. Social media is constantly changing, and it's so easy to get digital fatigue because we're usually just scrolling and we're looking for things that entertain us or that we can learn from, but we're not always actually responding and connecting. And I think that's that next step for me and for you to build a greater community through Here to Uplift. I have to shout out some of the people I've seen do this because I think it's amazing when I see it happen. A lot of folks are familiar with the Hermosies if you're in the business world. The Hermosies have done a great job of not just expanding their business, but of really creating a network of entrepreneurs and business owners who are following their work and following their path. And of course, they have lots of businesses now, but it definitely started with gym owners, and gym owners have a huge community through the Hermosi network now. I've seen Natalie Ellis and Danielle Canty with Boss Babe do it. I've seen Lindsay Schwartz from Powerhouse Women do it. Rachel Rogers from Hello 7. I could keep going on, but you're now getting a little snapshot as to some of my favorite podcasts that I listen to. My point here is when we take our moments of listening, learning, just kind of taking in that inspiration into an action step of actually connecting with others, not only do the topics and lessons that we're learning apply more into our lives because, we always learn more when we teach someone or when we connect with someone on a topic because we're putting things into our own words, reflecting on it, etc. But it also means that we can make a greater impact in our communities, create those ripples of really leadership, entrepreneurship, seeing other women do amazing things in our communities. And then that expands because our community may start small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So I want us to connect in our physical world. If you are local in the Bay Area, hit me up. We can connect. A lot of my guests are in the Bay Area. In this season, we'll also have some folks from Southern California and some folks connecting from across the states because I'll be doing some virtual podcasts as well this season. And you can connect with all of our guests, but also the listeners. So here's how you can do that. Here's my details. I'm going to kind of pull up my little list. How do you get engaged with the Here to Uplift community in this season in 2024? Number one, actually connect. Let's talk, let's connect. When you don't have the capacity to actually have a conversation, a share of something goes a long way. And I just have to say, I appreciate so much all the folks that have already done this in the first year of the podcast, that have liked the episodes, that have shared some of the short form content you see popping up on Instagram and Facebook. It means a lot to me when y'all share it. And I know it means a lot to our guests as well, because it helps us to relate to one another, to know what kind of topics are actually important. It helps to know that the vulnerability that we're operating in is worth it because somebody else is resonating or getting touched by the words that we're saying. And it helps us to keep going. Really, that feedback helps us be motivated, as simple as a like and a share of something. Now, when you do have the capacity, please, let's actually have a conversation. Have a conversation with me, have a conversation with our guest, have a conversation with each other on whatever the topic of that podcast is or whatever it might inspire you to think about. I'll have a newsletter coming out every single month that will just kind of get our juices flowing in terms of what kind of conversations we can be having for that month, for that season, to help you continue working your way into that bigger goal or dream, whatever yours is. Of course, we will continue to be centralized along our themes of entrepreneurship, women's empowerment, leadership, and holistic wellness, and what it looks like to find that balance unique balance, really, because there's no one way of doing it, but that unique balance of hustle and flow for each of us and how we incorporate everyday wellness practices into our life so that we don't burn out, but that we can keep going and reaching for those goals and dreams. So in addition to the newsletter, you can get connected with our Facebook group community. This is brand new. We had a Facebook page for Here to Uplift, but it's very different to have an actual group where you can comment, post, and chat with one another. And I think this will be a great way to engage. And similarly, for folks who aren't so much Facebook users, but are more LinkedIn users, we will have a LinkedIn group as well. So you can build your digital community with Here to Uplift on either of those platforms. I love, love, love posting shorts onto Instagram. You have seen that expand incredibly in the last 2 quarters of 2023. So this second half of the year, we really boosted our short form content so that, if you don't always have the time to listen to the full episode, you can get in those little clips and still be inspired that way and check out the various guests that we've had on the show. And that will be continuing. So in 2024, you can expect continued short form content featuring clips from the podcast episodes on our Instagram page. And then one of my favorite things to announce right now that I've been working really hard on is a new website. So in general, where do you find all of this? Where do you find the centralized place to get the podcast, get the resources that I'll be creating to align with many of the podcasts, to find out contact information from all the guests from the past episodes, to see where you can connect with the community, to see if there's any courses that align with some of the podcasts that we've had so you can continue your learning. All of the things will be on our new website. So yeah, there's lots of ways to get engaged in this season. Please listen and watch, the podcast, of course, watching on YouTube, listening on almost any platform where podcasts are made available, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. Watch, listen, do whatever floats your boat in that sense. Connect with us on social media and interact with some of the shorts, like and share them so we know what topics you're actually interested in and which guests you're most excited to hear about. And then connect with each other. Facebook community, LinkedIn community, responding to something on my story, DMing me, lots and lots and lots of ways to connect this season that we didn't really have in 2023. So with change comes growth. So we had some challenges in 2023 just in terms of not necessarily on the podcast, but life challenges and evolving. We learned from them, and now we're going into 2024 applying those lessons and taking action, not just reading, not just listening, but doing and connecting. So I hope that this is a season of doing and connecting for you, and not just doing and connecting by itself, but doing and connecting with consistency and unapologetically, because you deserve to reach your goals. You deserve to make your dreams a reality, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. All right? Okay, so all the things I've said now probably tangented a lot. I don't even think tangented is a word, but all the tangents I've been on through this episode. Here's my recap, my wrap up for what I want you to get out of this. Number 1, change is inevitable. So I encourage you to flow season to season and figure out when it's time to hustle, get your grind on, add more things to plate, say yes, figure out what seasons you need to wait, listen, pause for further direction before adding more things on, and let those seasons flow season to season, doing what you need to reach that bigger goal. That's my main point of inspiration, number 1 point for this episode. Number 2 point of this episode is I want you to connect more. Connect with me, connect with our guests, and connect with one another, the other viewers and listeners of the Here to Uplift podcast, so that we can truly create a community. So, of course, in the description, this will all be linked, all the ways that you can connect with the community. Please go ahead and take some action and get connected right away. We will have a brand new episode of the podcast every single Monday. So go ahead and mark your calendars. 2023, it was on Tuesdays. 2024, I want to get us started off with our work week, and I'm putting work week in quotes because there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this who don't operate on a typical Monday through Friday schedule. But, starting off our typical week every Monday with the podcast is going to be really special. And although you can listen to it at any time, I want to make sure that you can mark it on your calendar when to expect that episode and start your week off right with some inspiration. Number 3 points is just get ready for more exciting and engaging episodes. What I didn't mention in terms of our growth and upgrades for 2024 is that I got all new equipment. I'm super excited about it. If you're watching the video, you can probably see, I got some of the cameras that we're working with in the back. This one I'm still recording on an iPhone and with my DJI mics, which I'm going to do kind of an episode on this later too for YouTube that just talks about the equipment I have used in getting started, what my middle phase was, which is kind of what I'm doing right now with the iPhone DJI mics, because before I didn't even have mics. So what to do just to get started with podcasts or recording content if you want, what that middle ground is, and now how I'm upgrading to a lot more professional equipment with help. Definitely didn't do this alone. So I'm excited to advance our equipment, and you will definitely notice that in the coming podcast right away from podcast episode 1 of 2024. And then we're also going to be doing some different style guest interviews. So we'll still have that one-on-one interview style, but we'll also have some group podcasts where I interview 2 or 3 people at a time. And then we're going to be capturing some live podcasts as well. So please make note if you are in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, anywhere around San Jose, we are definitely going to have more live podcasts. The first live podcast that we're actually recording is the one with Bri Castillo Jimenez. Super excited that we've interviewed a professional fighter. Like, just what? What? I'm so excited for the amazing guests that we're having on this show. So if you're listening to this when this episode airs on December 31st, you'll be getting that episode in a couple weeks. So I'm super excited for y'all to hear that. And if you're watching this later, go ahead and make sure you check that episode out. That's really special and the first live podcast I've ever recorded. So all that to say, there's lots of great things to come. Thank you for your support throughout 2023 of the Here to Uplift podcast. And thank you in advance for your support of the podcast in 2024. I look forward to connecting with you, to making more great content and inspiring whoever we can along the way. We're going to have amazing guests on every episode, and I hope that every second you listen is absolutely worth it. I'll take your feedback, I'll take your connections, your commentary, and I'll take even nominations for guests and requests on what topics we should explore next. So here we go, 2024, it is on. Go ahead and take action, do the big things, and uplift each other, uplift yourself, and watch those ripples come along the way. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Here to Uplift podcast. I hope you're finishing this episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. We want to keep the stories and inspiration coming, so please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with a friend. We really appreciate it. Welcome to the Uplift community, friend. Please join us for another episode soon.